Y'all, put the meat on the grill. Who bringing the sides? What are we having to drink? Okay, it's a celebration. It's a celebration. Ding dong, the witch is dead. What witch? The wicked witch. Okay, or I should say the warlock. Are men warlocks and women witches? Y'all can clarify for me in the comments. But either way, we packing this nigga the fuck up, okay? Sean P.Diddy, aka the Bermuda Triangle of hip hop, has been arrested. Finally, good is good, okay? So as I'm sure you guys have heard, unless you just been hiding under a rock somewhere, P. Diddy was apprehended in New York, I believe this Monday, the 16th, which not lost upon me. The number 16 from a numerology standpoint is a symbol of tragedy. A lot of times when really fucked up shit happens, like catastrophes, tragedies, sorrowful circumstances, can be tied to the number 16. Not always, right? But I just thought that was really interesting, right? But today I'm going to do a revisited of sorts, okay? Because I did do a celebrity natal chart reading for P. Diddy maybe about 5 years ago. And just me being the type of person I am, my Virgo moon, I'm never really satisfied with the work that I put out, especially when, other things tend to take place, like in terms of, there are other updates in the media. So I wanted to just revisit his natal chart to touch on some components surrounding the allegations surrounding Diddy. As y'all may know, he has been, I think he was brought up on charges for racketeering, trafficking and something else. The tale is as old as time. So many people have so many stories about Diddy. I am of a particular age to where I remember making the band. I remember watching making the band. I remember watching this man's attitude. I remember, learning more about like the 90s and Bad Boys era of hip hop, West Coast, East Coast, his dealings with Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight and all of that other stuff. Like, I have already been peeped that Diddy is from the seventh ring of hell. I was just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. You know what I mean? But in today's video, we're going to take a look at one Diddy's natal chart just to see if there are any or if there's any validity to the claims and allegations being brought forth. Spoiler alert, there is. If you are still pro Diddy, this may not be the reading for you. I ain't gonna lie. Cause y'all gonna jump me. Y'all gonna call me a hater. Y'all gonna say I'm biased. I'm not a good astrologer and all other types of shit. So you might want to click off now. And then also I want to take a look at some of his transits that really shifted things into high gear, and then maybe even make some predictions for the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So P. Diddy, the Diddler, was born on November 4th, 1969, making him a Scorpio sun. I've seen so many different think pieces floating around on Astro Twitter regarding, him being a Scorpio. And so if you've been rocking with the Astro Queen, if you're a part of the Astro fam, you'll know there are some basic things that come to mind when we talk about Scorpio, okay? And I'll even help him out and start on the lighter end of the spectrum. Number one, prominence, okay? High influence. So these are people who can attain a lot of power, a lot of, success, and a lot of times their ability to work with other people in a very similar manner to Aquarius, where, Scorpio is one of those signs that they can also kind of find their way up the totem pole by way of other people or through like collaboration of sorts. Scorpio is the sign of collaboration. It could deal with merging with other people to become like greater, right? And this is also shown in like other celebrities, like I would say Drake, right? Or even Future. Great artists in their own right, everybody has their own opinion, but these are also rappers who a large part of their catalog and discography consists of features. Like they're amazing feature artists, whether it's, putting out joint projects or whatever the case may be. So boom. But then also, if we're talking on the darker end of the spectrum, Scorpio is destructive. Scorpio can be drunken with power, So you have the people who could be on like power trips, and usually kind of tend to torture other people in the process. Okay, especially when you add in the fact he has Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn. I've already unpacked that a million different times, but long story short, that Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn can absolutely manifest in a lot of the issues that he's having with his reputation, where there are going to be a lot of really intense situations coming at him to where he has to fight to protect his name and his reputation, where somebody's anger and things like that can be off the hinges. As someone with Mars at the 29th degree myself, no Diddy, that placement in and of itself can be it can produce a lot of volatility, and it can even show up in the form of domestic violence, interpartner violence, or just issues with women, hence the number 2. So especially when it's attached to a man, Mars at the 29th degree can make a man very violent and very hostile, and sometimes even, especially in this case, a woman beater, right? Or where he may have a certain sense of inferiority with Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn. And the only way he's able to kind of make himself feel better is to, abuse or attack or, explode, right? Unleash a lot of that pent up anger and aggression towards other people. And usually it could be in the form of punishment, or, you do something in that goes against, what he wants. It can make him a control freak. And that's also circling back around to the darker octave of Scorpio. Scorpio can be very controlling. Scorpio can be very dark-sided in the sense that because it governs the 8th house, right? Scorpio is naturally going to encompass all things that are lower level, even taboo. And this is why a lot of Scorpios, especially if they're really in touch with that kind of energy, can be into some kinky shit. All things taboo, things that people don't really want to talk about, so they can be downright freaky. That's where you get the freaky deaky icky kind of archetype of Scorpio, right? The stereotype of all Scorpios being super, super freaky. And, in the worst cases, which is not everyone, this could show up as like deviance. I see a lot of celebrities who have a lot of that, like that Scorpio energy, especially if other, parts of their chart support it, where it can easily shift over, that line between like, okay, being sexual, or engaging in a lot of sex, having a high sex drive, or whatever the case may be, and then you slowly start crossing into like debauchery territory. Right. And a really good example of this would be like Trey Songz and R. Kelly, who both have Scorpio, but on the South Node. In this instance, once again, P.Diddy is a Scorpio sun, but the sun also deals with, it can deal with sex. The sun can deal with recreation. So where he could just be, it's almost like a daredevil kind of aspect, or a placement anyway, the sun in Scorpio. At the 12th degree at that, because the number 12 can deal with sacrifices. Scorpio also deals with demonic energy, which is very interesting because you hear a lot of people, kind of allude to him being of a darker presence. You have like the Illuminati theories that have been going on for a very long time. Scorpio also rules the anus, and I'm not saying every Scorpio is into anal, but in this situation, I mean, hey, what can you say? What can you say? Not to mention, his Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn kind of carries this energy out because, it could also reinforce there being issues tied to like his sexual identity with Mars at the 29th degree, especially a Capricorn too. So like even with him being into a lot of the things that he was into, by virtue of him being a Scorpio and then having Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn, he could have gotten away with concealing that for as long as, he did. That Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn could also entail there being, like him having that leverage of control over like the police force, because that's something that everybody's not talking about. The fact that he had actual like members of the LAPD, I believe it was, on his payroll. So clock that T. Mars in Capricorn is very much all about like authority. It can deal with the police. It can deal with dealing with like higher level government. And with it being at the 29th degree, you could look at this as him, experiencing like the blowback of that at this point. So him being in all of this legal problems or having all these legal problems, I should say. But especially with Pluto, transit of Pluto forming a conjunction to his Mars. So clock that T. But in addition to that, that's also just a manifestation of, even his sexual dysfunction. Mars and Capricorn on a darker level can get off on like the sadisticness of sex and torturing people and, all of that, and Scorpio, for what it's worth, can also deal with grape, remove the G, just because Scorpio in its darker mode can be forceful. That's due to, it's ruled by Mars, which is also very forceful and aggressive, and then Pluto. So it can deal with grape or people who can, force themselves on others or just live very devious, even criminal lifestyles. Scorpio rules crime. So, as we go down, even, people call me negative all the time, but even in this instance, you can literally go down the list and check off even all of the dark-sided or, lower level Scorpio traits, and it aligns with Diddy 1000%. Scorpio, the lower octave of Scorpio tends to siphon off energy or to suck, almost like it's a very like vampire-ish in nature, if that makes sense. Or even, you can even say like parasitic, which in essence, also you can even compare to Diddy in the sense that he had this reputation for sucking the life out of people. And death tends to follow these people wherever they go. Like I said, not every Scorpio, but this could be a very common theme, especially if you are somebody who's kind of energetically resonated on that lower vibrational level. Scorpio is the sign of death. So these are people where, for women, it can manifest in having like husbands who, like being black widows, or maybe like every man that you get with ends up dying or encountering a very tragic issue surrounding, the loss of a man in your life, the father, or even a child, because the sun represents children. Once again, I'm not saying this is going to be the case for every Scorpio sun. But this could also manifest in someone who, no matter who they are around, it's kind of like that energy, that darker energy, death and things like that tend to follow them. And I always say everybody who has gotten within a 50-mile radius of P. Diddy ends up dying, going to jail, coming up broke. Scorpio is the sign of like bankruptcy, if you will, even. It can bankrupt you metaphorically because it speaks to this energy of someone who can take from people, and it's like they're siphoning off power. They become stronger, but everybody else around them becomes weaker, or they can just kind of throw people away or like devalue, the people around them. This is also reinforced with Diddy's sun in opposition to Saturn and Taurus. So you can look at that as like his bad business dealings, or him being very shrewd with business, taking money out of people or food out of people's mouths with Saturn and Taurus opposing his sun in Scorpio. You could even look at this as like him holding opportunities. Saturn is a opportunity-based planet, right? Saturn and Taurus, like the opportunity to make money, the opportunity to do business. You can even look at that as like the music industry, like holding that over people's head as leverage. with it opposing his sun in Scorpio. Like, it's a power thing. It's a control thing. And he could be like that with his kids too, like where he could keep his children on a very tight leash. That could even represent like cutting off a child financially, denying a child if you really wanted to. So that's just the type of person he is, very shrewd, very cruel, and can utilize a lot of those resources to, whether it be like torture someone or, just make your life harder. Very Saturn in opposition to the sun, But that could also represent like problems for Diddy as it pertains to his money. I don't think that he's a billionaire. I think there was a point in time where he had the potential to be one or was on track to be one. But with this Sun, Saturn opposition, Sun in Scorpio, Saturn at the 4th degree of Taurus, that can actually point to where he can run into some problems with his money along the line, somewhere along the line. He also has his Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn, squaring Venus at the 22nd degree of Libra. This is an aspect that can also signify issues with money, where he could essentially lose all his money trying to fight these court cases, or he lost a good portion of that money, a lot of his money trying to settle lawsuits. And I know a lawsuit that he settled more recently was the lawsuit that was brought towards him by Cassie. Okay. So Venus in Libra can produce situations where you may have to go to court, where you could be tied up in, legalities and things like that. But the fact that it's squaring his Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn can signify major, upheavals surrounding his money because of those things. You know what I mean? Like where he's being sued left and right. Which clearly has come to pass, right? Now, this square also is very significant in terms of his temperament. I do see this Venus square Mars aspect in the charts of a lot of men who are violent towards women, and even who may not even like women like that much, if we being for real. And the fact that he has Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn kind of enhances this, because it could create this kind of dynamic to where maybe someone doesn't really they're not really into women like that, but it could just be for show. So maybe they have a lot of pent up anger, hostility and things like that. And it's kind of like the woman has to, or women have to pay for it. That's very reflective of this Venus square Mars. If you see a man with Venus square Mars in his chart, I would go find something safe to do. You can ghost a man with Venus square Mars. It's okay. And then honestly, this could just be also reflect how he is in general, just with people. Where he is someone who could absolutely, especially if he feels like you're lesser than them, or if you don't have as much as he does, or, if he's the one who can hold opportunities over your head, hence that Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn, where he can be really nasty and abusive. That's just, simple as that. And once again, utilizing law enforcement to work on his behalf and doing some of his dirty work also could be very symbolic of this square. It can also make him rather trigger happy too. Y'all know they say the gag and the tea is back in 2000 or 1999 or one of them years. There was a shooting that happened in a New York nightclub. The rapper Shine ended up taking the fall for it, did a whole bunch of time in prison. Come to find out, witnesses, including the lady who was shot, said that Diddy was the one who shot her, and this is where, as the, trial goes forward and we learn all of these details about what's, been going on this whole time, where there are situations where Diddy has really been out here getting down on folks, guns, all that shit. That's very Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn, or even having like a bodyguard or something like that, or somebody who like works for the government or a police officer, but they kind of go rogue and they like, you pay them extra money under the table and they do criminal shit. Like, they do what you want them to do, type training day type shit. That's very reflective of Diddy's Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn. So yeah, there's that. And then he has that Mars square Mercury, so he could just be trigger happy, or, that could also just make him very argumentative, or just someone who is, like I said, just his temperament, where he's just a very disagreeable person, not easy to get along with. And where he has that kind of reckless energy. Like I said, he has a lot of different indicators of like self-destruction and stuff like that. Or somebody who gets a rush, off of stuff like that. Being a bad boy, a daredevil. Hence the name Bad Boy, right? So, I mean, for what that's worth, he also has his Mars squaring Saturn. That could also reinforce there being some issues with his, his manhood or his perceived manhood, a desire to, or maybe even him clinging towards older men. And y'all know they say the stuff that he did to other people was things that were done to him, which also makes sense. But you got to think about the fact that he was brought up under a lot of these big record execs and these people, these entities, right? Huge people. When we talk about going up the totem pole in the industry, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the Doomblum-Gotti, okay? These are like old old billionaires. And so I would argue, especially with his Mars at the 29th degree of Capricorn squaring Saturn, like, he's the type that he would do some strange for a piece of change with an old man, with an older man. His Venus in Libra conjoined to Jupiter at the 21st degree of Libra. That's also a manifestation of all of these different lawsuits, coming out and, just kind of like that chain reaction. That aspect is responsible for the chain reaction lawsuits. Like when Cassie came forth, because I think she has Libra on the nose as well. And the fact that this is also kind of activated by the fact that transit South Node is in Libra too. That's kind of what sparked all of like the lawsuit component of the situation. But I'll tell you what I don't see. I don't see anything in his chart regarding him being brother love, something that can make him loving and caring. Now, I will say he has Pisces on the North Node, but that speaks more to the fact that in this lifetime, one of the major lessons Diddy was supposed to learn would be how to be more compassionate, how to be more loving and caring towards other people. And this is actually a prime example of how operating in your South Node will create so much karma that at some point when you are kind of forced into your North Node, it'll be in the most unpleasant way. So for example, with Diddy having Virgo on the South Node, he does have he's also part of that Pluto Virgo generation. That speaks to him having a lot of issues with a lot of karma tied to like the people who work for him. Virgo deals with like the help, right? So where he's exploiting and abusing, using and abusing the help and making all of the people around him do and get involved in all these shiesty things and, whatever the case may be. And where he's kind of living life in that kind of energy, not taking care of his health, not sleeping. It's not lost upon me that he has addiction problems, right? Or the addiction issues, which is technically very like Pisces on the North Node. But instead of actually like getting help and, challenging himself to, activate that North Node, which would entail maybe him going to rehab, maybe, him doing some work on himself and having like a spiritual awakening or whatever the case may be, spending more of that energy and pouring more into actually like trying to help and other people with no strings attached. But instead of doing that, now you create all this karma for yourself to where when you are dragged towards that North Node energy, now he's going to prison, which is also very Pisces on the North Node, but obviously it's not a favorable manifestation of your North Node. Pisces can absolutely rule prison. Now this nigga going to prison for the rest of his life, potentially. His nodes are at the 18th degree as well. The number 18 can produce like someone who's like very sadistic and, you know, power hungry, money hungry, or just like a really nasty person. So he just has a lot of tricky placements, just in general. But I will say this, when I take a look at Diddy's transits, right? He has some important transits that really like put a lot of what's happening into context. So number one, as I mentioned, with transiting Pluto forming a conjunction to his Mars, it's very critical, very key. Okay, with his Mars at that 29th degree of Capricorn, like I said, it's really activating all of these issues surrounding his reputation, his name, you know, his face card is really being blasted. Period. Like, you know, all of the issues surrounding even his sexuality and his issues with women, and you know, all of that is really coming to a head, being punished. You know, even as it pertains to like legal or punitive punishment, all of that, you know, is coming to pass with this conjunction. But next up, we have this opposition between transiting Uranus and Taurus and his Neptune and Scorpio. Now, this aspect is responsible for a lot of the evidence being unearthed. All of this evidence, all of these facts that we're finding out about, like things that were previously secrets. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if there were like more videos and tapes. You know, he's already been exposed, beating Cassie, monkey stomping Cassie. So, you know, if this were to take form in the sense of like other videos coming out over time, that's one of my predictions. I wouldn't be surprised. Or like, you know, him being under fire as more things become more evident and apparent. He also has transit in North Node in Aries, forming an opposition to his Uranus. Another aspect that's really kicking all of this, you know, like this entire trial into gear. And where shit could get ugly, I could see him starting to turn on other people, or this could be other people pointing the finger and, you know, turning on him as well. Transit Chiron in Aries opposing his natal Venus. He just has a lot of these, even transit-wise, different indicators of, you know, money running thin, money running low, or, you know, like I said, a lot of legal hardship his way. Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, even with that opposition, when they talk about his conditions in jail and shit, like, you know, he could be under attack and it's unsafe and it would be a badge of honor. Cause that's what his attorney was saying to the judge in order to request bail, okay, for Mr. Diddy. He said that, you know, hey, my client could get murked, Your Honor. Well, with transit Chiron and Aries in opposition to Venus, and Libra, that could be like him getting attacked or him getting stabbed, him getting into a fight, you know, him being an open target. You know what I'm saying? Then you got transit in Jupiter and Gemini squaring his node. So this could be, you know, all of his business, his secrets going public. This actually is the manifestation of like the media, like the public coverage of like all of the unearthed, you know, evidence and things that have been going on, like where there, you know, I could see this being a highly publicized kind of ordeal. Expect, you know, people coming out with interviews, books, especially with Jupiter and Gemini squaring Virgo on his South Node, like people who worked for him in the past. I think his bodyguard wrote a book, you know, that's very symbolic of this this square that Jupiter and Gemini is making, where, you know, all of the secrets that have been kind of accumulating, especially with that Pisces North Node, are going to be, people are, they're going to get exposed, and we've already been seeing that. Yeah, so Diddy is in the fight of his life. I personally do not feel bad for him. Like I said, you know, he had his entire life at his big grown age to, you know, really learn how to activate that Pisces North Node. Take a break, take a rest, take some time back, reflect. Like I said, become more spiritually enlightened in a real way and not just for show. You know, become more compassionate. You know, those kind of things, building more empathy towards other people. And clearly he was not capable of that. He used that Pisces. I will say when he tapped into his Pisces North Node, it usually was for bad, you know, for drugs, which is also very Pisces. creating videos and recording people and all that. That's also very Pisces in nature. Trafficking, Pisces, you know, especially when we talk about like Jupiter, getting Jupiter in the equation. So I said all that to say, you know, it is what it is. And if you think Carisha Brownlee is innocent, I got a bridge to sell you. Okay? She has Scorpio on the North Node for a reason, but that's a different video for a different day. I'm going to go ahead and end here. Y'all drop down in the comment section. Let me know what y'all thought about this whole situation. How do you feel about Diddy's natal chart, his transits? Can you relate to some of these aspects? Or, you know, do you know anyone who can? Okay? Y'all take care. Make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And I will catch y'all in the next video.